Most weight loss plans are one size fits all, not taking into account each person's individual needs. Noom is here to change that. Noom Weight uses psychology. That's why they say losing weight starts with your brain. But it also takes into account your unique biological factors, which also affect weight loss success. The program helps you understand the science behind your eating choices and why you have cravings. Everyone's journey is different, so your daily lessons are personalized to you and your goals. One of the great things about Noom is that it's nourishing instead of restrictive. They focus on progress instead of perfection. You don't have to give up carbs, or anything for that matter. Have cravings? Food FOMO? Noom can help you lose weight while still enjoying your favorite foods. To date, Noom has helped more than 5.2 million people lose weight. Stay focused on what's important to you with Noom's psychology and biology-based approach. Sign up for your trial today at Noom.com. That's Noom.com.
You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Archaeology Show. TAS goes behind the headlines to bring you the real stories about archaeology and the history around us. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Archaeology Show, episode 284.
On today's show, we talk about our recent visit to Washington, D.C., where we saw the National Museum of the American Indian, Ford's Theater, the National Archives, and the National Museum of Natural History.
Let's dig a little deeper. Make it so.
No.
Welcome to the show, everybody. How you doing?
Hello.
All right. Well, this might be the last time for a couple months that we mention where we're at.
I know, because we're in one place and we're not moving.
We're not RVers anymore. We gave it all up.
We're like literally our RV is in storage right now.
Yes.
But that's just because we're visiting family for the holidays. And I know the holidays aren't actually here yet, but we just decided to get here earlier and hang out from now until the end of the year.
Although there could be one time in December, if we don't get our shit together, that we're recording in another country.
No. We're going on a cruise. I know what you're thinking, going on a cruise again. God, those guys. Anyway,
nobody's
we're going
thinking
on a cruise.
that, just you. Yeah.
I'm thinking that. Anyway, we're going on a cruise and we're not taking our recording equipment.
We might have to.
No,
yeah.
Get your shit together. We're not taking our recording equipment.
Although we might record there. There might be some historical stuff we see.
Maybe.
Yeah, I'm bringing the little mics.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
You can have travel mics. You just podcaster to the core, you.
Have mics will travel.
Anyway.
Yes.
So, yes.
All right,
we're
so
in
speaking
Charlotte.
of travel.
We're in Charlotte, North Carolina for the next couple months. And so this episode is going to be the last one for a little while where we talk about cool historical and archaeological things that we have seen in our travels.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe there's cool historical things here in Charlotte. We may not see any of it. We'll try. Maybe. I don't know.
I mean, I grew up here. There's not that much. But
we might have to make an effort to go see some stuff because I know there is things here.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are things here.
It's just like not that old of a city, surprisingly enough, being in the Southeast.
A few hundred years. I mean, but there's prehistoric things here.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. All right. But anyway, a few weeks ago, because we've had some interviews, we've had some other crazy stuff going on this podcast that we don't normally do. But a few weeks ago, we were in Greenbelt, Maryland at a pretty cool campground where we were sort of off grid in the middle of a city.
It was crazy. It was kind of like Central Park in New York, except this was a green area in the middle of like suburban DC, basically.
Right.
Like we were in Maryland technically, but
and this park was huge and run by the National Park Service.
Yeah.
And all of anytime we tried to map somewhere to go, like we're going to go to a restaurant that's like literally 2 miles from the park, it was 20 minutes away. Yeah. Because it was 15 minutes to get out of the park.
Just to get out of the park. It was big. And they put the campground at the far end of it. So like,
right in the middle.
But it was such a cool spot. I have to keep talking about this just a little bit longer because, okay, like we're nerds. I really feel like all of our listeners are nerds. Please don't take offense. I think that's a good thing. And if you have thoughts or plans to visit DC, but you're put off by how expensive the lodging is there, and it is, we know, then look into this campground because it's very reasonable. And if you have either tent equipment or, you know, an actual like trailer or something, a small RV, you could rent an RV. It just makes being in the DC area so much more affordable. And there is a train station within walking distance if you want to do that. We did not. It was pouring rain. It wasn't going to work. We had to drive. But, it just makes DC so accessible and much cheaper. So
they've got a path right from the campground, literally called the Metro Trail.
Yeah.
That takes you to not the metro station, but a road that's like then a half a mile from the metro station. So, I mean, it's going to take you 20 minutes to a half an hour to walk to the metro station.
Yeah, but that's not terrible. In nice weather, like we would have totally done that if it had been nice out.
Yeah, it was just disgusting.
Too rainy. Wasn't going to work.
If we were just going there for the day, we may have done it, but we were actually going to go there and spend the night, which we'll talk about in segment 2 or later. Yeah. But we had stuff with us and like nicer clothes, so we didn't want to get all gross. Yeah. But it was and it was a little humid. So
it was humid, and somebody among us is not a fan of being humid.
Body
ever.
Was not built for sweating.
Yeah.
I mean, I can sweat, but I just don't want to when I'm about to go to a play. Right. So anyway,
yes. So DC.
Yeah. So that was actually on that Friday at the end of the week. Segment 2 will be about what we did that night. But the next day, on Saturday, we went and did a couple of museums. Now, we've been to DC before. You've been a few times. I'd only been once before where we really kind of did it up. But one of the things we didn't do the first time we went together was the National Museum of the American Indian. So we made a point to go there this time. Yeah,
we just didn't have time when we were there last time. But this time we decided to prioritize it so that we wouldn't run out of time like we did before.
And we went there right when it opened.
Yes.
Which was cool because there was almost nobody there at the entrance.
Yeah, another tip. Go when these places first open because... yeah, there was nobody there. And because the weather was bad too, it felt like it never got crowded, even though it was a Saturday that we were there. So
kind of shoulder season too. It was mid-September.
Yeah, true. But I mean, rainy day at a museum, like that's not a bad way to spend your afternoon, So like that was kind of perfect.
Yeah.
But okay, so just quick facts about the museum so you know like what it is, where it is, how it came about. It's officially called the National Museum of the American Indian. It is on the National Mall. It's one of the closer museums actually to the Capitol. When you're looking at the National Mall, it's I don't think there's too much past it before you get to the Capitol. And it was built as a result of the National Museum of the American Indian Act, which was passed in 1989. That was way earlier than I expected it to be.
Yeah.
I didn't know that this whole thing was put into motion that long ago, but 1989. And it was sort of like a we're so sorry kind of act. Because in the 80s, it came out that the Smithsonian Institution housed 12,000 to 18,000 human remains, and many of those were Native American, and the Native American groups across the country were, justifiably not happy about that. They really don't like their ancestors to be in a box somewhere on a shelf. They really don't like that. And that is totally understandable. So part of what this was to repatriate these remains and then any of the funerary or ritual objects that also went along with those remains to the various tribes. So it was kind of a twofold purpose. Build a museum to teach people about Native Americans, but also return remains and important objects to tribes around the country.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just going there, everything about the museum, like I would say some of the museums on the National Mall, now some of the museums on the National Mall, when you go there, they're just like America's version of Rome. That's what I feel like. Like they're just like these
they're huge
monolithic, things that are just like, if you've ever been to Rome or Greece, you see these huge columns and buildings, and it's almost like our attempt at that, right?
Well, because they were built like 100 years ago when that like Greek revival style was so popular. Right.
But this was built in conjunction with a number of organized tribes across the country.
Yes.
And there's a lot of styles, and literally every single detail that you see outside and inside the museum has been thought out.
Yeah.
Every single piece of detail.
Yeah.
I mean, from the vegetation, the trees, the little almost like the water feature on the outside, the shape of the museum, every single the orientation of it, even everything has been thought out.
Yeah, it's this really large, like flowing looking structure, and you learn so another cool tip is that you can do like an audio tour for free. Yeah. And what we did is you had it on your phone, and then we shared a pair of headphones and listened to it together so that we can kind of experience the audio tour together. That worked really well for us. And
that's put together by the museum, by the way. That's not like something separate, third party.
Exactly. I'm sure there are other ones out there, but this is free and it's from the museum. So like you hear people who are affiliated with the museum talking, which is really cool.
Like Carlton's cousin.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Which there's an interview on an old episode of Life in Ruins with Carlton's cousin, Kevin Gover. Kevin Gover.
Dr. Kevin Gover. He actually is one of the directors of the museum. Yes. The director of the museum.
Yeah. He's moved on. He's in a higher position now, but he was at that time. Anyway, you hear interviews with them and them talking about the decisions they made when they were building the museum and how there is a Native American architect and designer, and all of the water was meant to flow around the building in a way that is significant to various Native American cultures. And yeah, it was just really cool. And so much thought and planning went into it. And sometimes that can really backfire and it looks too contrived. But this structure is just stunning inside and out. I can't, even if you don't want to take the time to run through all the exhibits, just walk in and check out that first atrium in the front and all the different pieces from all the different cultures around the country, around North America, really, that go into it. It's just stunning. Yeah.
And just talking about that entrance, some of the things I liked about it were they didn't try to represent, I guess Native American cultures or a Native American culture in like a pristine fashion. Yeah. Because one of the most striking features of the entrance when you first come in is not only the ceiling that goes, all the way up with this sort of skylight, but there's this big copper woven feature, and it's made of copper because copper was an important metal to a number of cultures. And that's what they say in there. I can't remember exactly which cultures, but the copper feature is a woven basket, and it's represented as a basket that's like half buried in the ground. Yeah. Which I like. It's like cool. It's like an archaeological feature. Yeah. So it's not like a pristine basket that somebody would have woven that's just sitting there. It's literally a buried basket that's been found. Right. So cool. I love that too. It was, and it's on such a grand scale too. So it's huge. It's very immersive when you're walking around in it, and I mean, you don't really feel like you're in a basket, but like you can see what they were going for. It's really cool. Yeah. And as you listen to the audio, there's probably 7 or 8 different clips just from that entrance area, because the sandstone on the walls, there's a prism that's in this wall window feature that kind of changes as the sun goes through, and I'm actually looking at my pictures, kind of remembering all this. And there's just like literally, like I said, every single detail that's in this room, from a totem pole from the Pacific Northwest. Yep. And just all kinds of things. And that's all just in the entryway. So from there you get into the different floors and the exhibits that they have that are, and just like any museum, I don't think any of the exhibits are permanent. They're probably there for a certain period of time and then they rotate out. Yeah. And I felt like they did a really good job. I know there's been some criticism of this museum over the years. We don't really need to go into that too much. I found an article written by a Native American woman where she goes into her criticisms of it. But what I think they were trying to do is communicate Native culture through their art, both past and present. Yeah. And also, I think the criticism has been that this museum has sometimes glossed over the colonialism aspect of the interaction between Europeans and Native Americans. And for that reason, I think they've corrected, because now there is a huge exhibit about all the treaties between Native American groups and colonial Europeans of various different nations, and how most of those were broken by the Europeans, or they were just completely misunderstood by the Native Americans because they didn't have any concept of a treaty like that. That just wasn't something that was part of their culture. They just did not connect correctly. And they did a good job of portraying that. It is a lot of words on displays, which was kind of hard. God. And I started like cruising through it a little quickly at the end there, like just picking up the words on displays. Like I could read this somewhere else. It so irritates me when it's like that. Represent it some other way, but I understand it. But this, you do need to read the words of the people at the time, and it's from both sides, both the Native side and the European side. And some of them are authentic artifacts too, which I do like seeing. Yeah. That's what museums are for in some cases, right? Yes. And speaking of, kind of along the lines of colonialism is cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
And that exhibit was really cool.
I loved that exhibit.
Because there's a huge exhibit showing how it kind of starts off saying that people say that Native Americans don't have much influence on our culture. And by our, I mean like white people and Americans.
Like American culture.
Yeah. Like as though Native Americans aren't Americans.
Yeah.
But there's this huge exhibit showing throughout decades, including now, where Native American symbolism and words and just imagery has been used and flagrantly used throughout time, from things you probably know, like the Indian motorcycle brand, to just crazy advertising ads and things like that.
Like the cigar store Indian.
Yeah,
like
common
all that
things
kind of
like
stuff.
headdresses and stuff like that you see, down to things you might not even think of.
Yeah.
And there were so many things on this wall, just like, you know, not just stuff from the heyday of Native American imagery from like the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, but, you know, all the way up to now and before.
Even like there's a Barbie from like the 90s that was like Indian Barbie or whatever, you know?
Well, that I almost agree with, because Barbie went through a time where they were trying to represent like different cultures. So if they're going to have a black Barbie and why wouldn't they have an Indian Barbie?
Check your Barbie history, because they were not trying to make Barbie look or be like these other cultures. They were just trying to take white Barbie and like put other people's cultural stuff onto her. Now, yes, there was a black Barbie that came, you know, along pretty early, but it was not actually inclusive, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We could have a whole argument about that. What they're doing now is they are making more of an attempt to actually like bring other cultures into the Barbie world. But anyway, in the 90s, they were not doing that.
Sure.
So, yes.
All I know about Barbie came from the Barbie movie. So,
well, that Barbie movie is great. And so we can agree that was good.
Yeah.
But anyway, that exhibit was really, really cool. I enjoyed seeing that. And I actually liked the words in the audio tour where they were talking about how they could have made the choice to like show all this stuff as bad and, you know, censor it essentially. Right. But what they actually chose to do is display it all and be like, look, all of this happened and all of this had an effect on the American culture. It wasn't necessarily good, but it's a part of our history that we have to know and understand in order to do better going forward, and to understand why taking Native American imagery and using it like this to sell products is not okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was a really cool exhibit.
Right.
What other exhibits did you like?
Well, we went into the exhibit that focused on the Navajo artist that did the loom.
D.Y. Begay. I just pulled it up. Yeah.
She did all the loom weaving. Yeah. Right. Where I think, so I thought her weaving artistry was amazing. I thought it was really cool.
I was obsessed. It was hands down my favorite too.
On the other hand, an entire wing devoted to this.
But I think they have rotating artists that go through there. So
I understand.
Yeah.
And I get all that. But like, I thought it was like a really huge dedicated space to that. Now, if they do focus on a different artist and that's what that space is for, then that totally makes sense. Like if we go back in a year and it's a different artist.
It should be different. It looks like it's running until July of 2025 and then they'll change it up.
Well, then that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. One of the things I was a little bit disappointed with the museum, and maybe this isn't the focus of it because they have a lot of cultures that are vying for space here, is that I would have wanted to see, I guess, a lot more prehistoric history, like I would expect from a museum.
Yeah.
Like a lot of more education from that standpoint, but it seemed to be a lot more. The museum seemed to be focused around just like kind of the plight of the American Indian at this point.
Yeah.
And a little less focused on history and education about like prehistoric and that kind of stuff that we're interested in.
Yeah. You know? I was expecting to see like a section on the mound builders and a section on the big cultures in the Southwest and that kind of stuff.
Or origins or, you know.
Yeah. And they didn't really do any of that. Yeah. And I think you're right.
Maybe that's been overdone.
Well, maybe. And you can go to those places and experience those. But this museum is very small. You know, the big atrium area is just huge, wide open all the way to the ceiling. And none of that is exhibits. All the exhibits are along the backside, you know, and each floor is either a whole exhibit or it might be split into two. But yeah, I guess I was expecting there to be more prehistoric history. And it really did focus on the intersection between European and Native American culture, basically from the time of contact until now.
Yeah.
And they don't really do too much earlier than that. There's a couple big display cases with a mix of artifacts from all over the continent that they were grouped. There's a bunch of like masks in one.
Oh, masks.
Yeah. And then there was another one that was like all like weapons or something like that.
Yeah.
So they did do these big artifact displays, but it wasn't, they weren't focused on teaching you about a single culture. It was just like, look at all of these.
It was a mix.
Yeah. Things from all across the continent.
But I guess if you're going to have a museum on the National Mall, it kind of has to be that way.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have a problem with that. I thought it was really neat to see the different types of, games. The gaming one was really cool with like the lacrosse sticks. Did you know lacrosse? Hey, newsflash to everybody. We didn't know this. Lacrosse was a Native American game that has been co-opted by, white fraternity boys in the Northeast. So you're welcome, guys. Go thank an Indian for that.
Right. So.
Anyway. Yeah. So we had, I think I overall really enjoyed the museum. I liked the stuff that I enjoyed focusing on Native Americans today with their art, and then also that contact period up until now, and how that has impacted how Native Americans are today, which I think is a big goal of the museum, is to see why Native Americans are the way they are today, where they are, why they, all of those things are because of what happened 300, 400, even 500 years ago.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting. I was missing that prehistoric component. I wanted more of that.
Well, I'll wrap up by saying go hungry.
Oh,
because the restaurant downstairs, the cafe, if you will, there's, I think, 4 or 5 different areas where you can eat.
Yeah.
And we didn't go hungry enough because we made a mistake and had a little light breakfast at the restaurant at the hotel.
Yeah.
And I forced us into eating something because it looked amazing. And we shared like a Navajo flatbread, but they had Navajo taco. That's right. And they had like Pacific Northwest food and Southwest food and just like all kinds of different cultures and really good looking, authentic stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could just like eat anything you wanted and it looked really good. And it was just, it looked amazing. So definitely have food there.
And one of the almost highlights of the whole building is in the cafeteria, where you get to, if there's a seat available, there's a table right next to the water feature outside, or there's tables and there's a window there, but you can like watch the water feature. It's just a beautiful little setting, again, in the middle of DC.
Yeah, it depends on which one of you gets to sit facing the water feature. The other one gets your back to it. So depends on where you sit.
Not if you get one of the good tables that are like right along it, but
but it just depends on how you sit and how your relationship is, really. So, all right.
I always get the good seat.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, on the other side of the break, we'll talk about how we saw Captain Jonathan Archer play a zombie hunter at Ford's Theater. Back in a minute.
Zombie. When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Welcome back to episode 284 of the Archaeology Show. And we mentioned early on that we were headed out to Washington, D.C. on Friday. And basically the reason we were spending the night down there, aside from the fact that we had a free hotel room because of our Hyatt points.
Yeah. That made it a little easier to make that decision.
I know, right? Because otherwise it's stupid expensive to stay down there.
It really is.
Yeah. But that's one of the reasons we have the card that we have, because it allows us to stay free there. So
get points on like gas and stuff like that.
I know. Anyway, we saw Rachel was actually just searching around for things to do, and she happened to see just like a couple weeks before, and I was a little bit shocked. This was like opening week. Like, why are more people seeing this? But we were able to get tickets relatively easily, like a week before, for this play, the one-man play. And actually, this first debuted, I believe, in 1980 is when it first debuted, and then it was revived just now. And Scott Bakula, and this is why I say Captain Jonathan Archer, because even though that's not the first time I saw him, obviously Quantum Leap was the first time I saw Scott Bakula, but Scott Bakula played Captain Jonathan Archer in Star Trek Enterprise.
He did.
But anyway,
the forgotten Star Trek that basically nobody likes except for you, I think.
Quiet. It's perfect.
It's fine. It's
I
okay.
Know. It was okay. It wasn't great, but it was still.
It's part of the universe, so it's fine.
It's good. Anyway, so he plays President Lincoln.
Yeah.
And we watched him.
Did we say what it's called?
It's called Mr. Lincoln.
Mr. Lincoln.
It's called Mr. Lincoln. Mm-hmm. And he plays President Lincoln in Ford's Theater.
Yeah.
That Ford's Theater.
In the place where the man died.
We had basically center stage balcony seats right on the railing. Yeah. So we're sitting right down, looking down on the stage.
Yep.
And off to our right is the box where Lincoln was shot.
Yes.
And they've got it draped with like the flags and stuff like that. It's kind of dimly lit. Mm-hmm. And at the first part of the play, Scott Bakula comes out. He didn't do any sort of "Hi, I'm Scott Bakula," no Q&A, no anything. It's just like basically a play where he walks out and starts doing his thing. We'll talk about that in a minute. But at the first part of the play, it's kind of like he's being Lincoln and he's thinking retrospectively. He's like, oh, I was in this play and they do this thing where a gunshot like goes off and a flash in that box.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
But I think the whole play is meant to be if your life flashes before your eyes, like that kind of scenario before you die, right?
Right.
Because people say that you see your life flashing.
Yeah.
It's that in a play. And so it was him doing, Abraham Lincoln's life story basically in a play.
And it's one act. It was about an hour and 40 minutes or so.
Yeah.
With no intermission.
It could be 2 acts, but they chose to do it just as one because it wasn't like that long. Yeah.
No, it didn't seem, I looked at my watch a few times.
I know, like near the end I was like, I'm hungry. But that was a me problem, not a play problem.
Right. It was entertaining. He did it well.
Yeah.
It was definitely, it was interesting seeing just like one person my God, the memorizing of lines first off.
I know.
Yeah, it was well done. There were some sound effects, some lighting things, but otherwise it was just, there weren't really costume changes. He had like a jacket that he would use to change the scene a little bit and a desk that he would move to indicate sort of a scene change a little bit.
Yep. He had that famous hat came out at one point, of course, the Lincoln hat. And it was really good. And I think for me, like I wouldn't normally go to a play. Like I don't think we're really play people,
Yeah.
But this just being in the place where Abraham Lincoln was assassinated or he was shot,
Yeah.
And then to watch a play about him in the place where he was shot is just
crazy.
Yeah, it's just like just such a eerie feeling almost that like you're walking through his life knowing that his life is going to end right here in this building.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
It's interesting, the theater too. It didn't feel very fancy.
No.
Like that theater felt 150 years old, to be honest.
Well, this is all like not for profit kind of stuff. Like it's a very small theater and they in fact, I was just looking it up and this play is over. You've missed it.
It's already done.
Yeah. It was September 20th through October 13th.
Oh.
And that was it. Done.
Wow.
We saw it the second weekend that it came out, I think, right?
Was it the second weekend?
Or
I thought it opened that Wednesday before we went.
Oh, maybe that's what it was. Yeah. But anyway, it's closed now. So it's done.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I'm glad we got to see it.
I know. It was really neat.
Yeah.
So, and we're big history people. So just being in that place was just really neat.
I feel like I learned so much about Lincoln because I've never really studied Lincoln. I know what everybody else probably knows about Lincoln.
Yeah.
But I never knew some of the stuff, some of his history over why he was so adamant about really kind of getting into government and abolishing slavery.
Yeah, he was such an abolitionist.
Yeah.
From like an early age. I didn't know if I was saying that right.
Yeah. But some of the reasons behind that and some of his influences and just his his reasons around that. I really liked how his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, really just kind of was like, yeah, you're not really for me for like a year.
Yeah.
I didn't know she was so sort of highfalutin and he was like lowborn.
Like not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. That movie that came out a little while back was really a really good representation of his life too. So you can't see this play now, obviously, but that Lincoln, the movie was pretty good too.
We never saw that, did we?
We saw it.
Did we?
I saw it.
I don't think I saw it.
I think you did.
Anyway, I didn't see the Zombie Hunter one either. I made the reference, but I don't think I ever saw that.
Did that get turned into a movie? I know I read the book.
I'm pretty sure that was a movie.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, Abraham Lincoln, Zombie Hunter.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, never saw that. Anyway, it's worth seeing. Pro tip 2, if you do participate in the National Park Service passport program, don't forget your passport book
I forgot mine.
There is a gift shop at Ford's Theater and you can get a passport stamp there.
You can, but you know what? As it turns out, the last time we were in DC, I got a Ford's Theater stamp. We didn't go then. But now we've gone. So I feel like my stamp is legit.
Because it turns out you can actually get a stamp for a lot of things in DC at a lot of the other things in DC. Yes,
you can. Because they're all like, it's kind of a sprawling, well, it's a city, right? It's sprawling. And some of the monuments are pretty far from each other. So yeah.
So,
Anyway.
all right. So real quick at the end of this segment, there was one other thing that we did. And since we're talking about movies.
Are we talking about movies? Do we need to go into a new segment for this? Because I feel like you might have a lot to say right now.
I don't have a lot to say. But I am a little disappointed in the way movies are shot constantly, and they constantly disappoint me. And one of those movies is National Treasure. So,
but and it's also, like, to be clear, your favorite movie ever.
I just love like a little romp through history, right? And a little chase, right?
We know.
One of the places in National Treasure that didn't disappoint me was actually some of the stuff that was supposedly shot in Philadelphia.
Oh, the Independence Hall.
At the Independence Hall, even though I'm pretty sure it wasn't shot at Independence Hall.
I know you tried to climb on the roof and like you couldn't, but you could see the roof.
If I'm not mistaken, and I could be, that wasn't actually shot at Independence Hall. It was shot at Knott's Berry Farm in California.
Right, like
at like a recreation of it.
Yeah.
But either way, it's close enough.
Yeah.
Now, what they did get absolutely wrong was when the kid was going in to the archives to look at the Declaration and the Silence Dogood letters.
Yeah.
First off, that's not
for the cipher, right?
For the cipher.
Like, decipher
First off, the Silence Dogood letters are not in the National Archives.
No, they're not.
Near the Declaration.
No, but the little atrium area that the kid was walking into looked just like where
it kind of looked like that, but you can't just walk in there off the street.
No, well, okay, all right. You need to calm down.
Okay, you can't.
Take your breath.
The kid was running in and out, and you can't just do that. You have to have a ticket. You have to go through security.
All right.
You can't just walk in and out willy-nilly like this kid was doing.
All right, wait a second. Okay, back up.
I was really upset about that.
So here is how you go into the National Archives if you want to go see the Declaration and the Constitution. They are there together. You have to get a ticket, or wait. Well, you can wait in line if you want, but if you wait in line, you're going to be in line for like an hour probably. Or you get a ticket, which is what we did. It's a timed entry ticket and you get to skip the whole line and just like walk straight in. But you still, I mean, this is like our really important documents as a country, right? So you still have to go through a metal detector on your way in. So you go in through the metal detector. It just takes a little while to get through that. Mm-hmm. And then you go in and you head right up to the atrium that has the Declaration, the Constitution, and various other important papers. And then also like a lot of displays about what you're seeing. And it kind of sucked, right? Like there was just a crowd of people wanting to see everything, and you had to just like force your way up there. And then once you're close enough to actually see the Declaration and the Constitution, you get like shuffled along, like you're in a cattle chute, and people behind you are just pushing you along. So you're like trying to take a picture. Well, we could put some of our pictures on social media. We'll get them over to Tilly, but you know, like you're just getting pushed along, and you do your best to get pictures, but like it is what it is. So
pro tip, when you first get into the room there, people just kind of naturally go to the left and want to get in a line. And literally everybody that works at the archive is like, hey, there's no line. But Americans get in a line, but there is no line. And so we just like...
Well, polite people get in a line. And the polite people were in line, and then like...
There is no line.
Yeah. Well,
we jumped out of the line and we went straight over to the Declaration.
No, it was the Bill of Rights, I think.
The Bill of Rights.
The Bill of Rights is also there.
Yeah. So, I mean, just go right up to it and just kind of like take a picture and move on, right?
It's just that you can't, because like there will be 2 or 3 people deep in front of it.
Right.
So you either push your way into those people, or you kind of like get behind it and sort of like work your way in. And I don't know. It was crowded.
I feel like just kind of pushing your way in sort of the American way. So, you know,
I would say for your best Constitution and Declaration viewing, go in the morning. If you have to go on the weekend, go in the morning. And if you can go during the week, I bet it would be way better and less crowded, and you wouldn't have to fight people to get in there. So, yeah.
Anyway,
it was very cool to see our founding documents of our country.
And I'm pretty sure that the security is pretty tight on those documents. Yes. I do think that they have lasers and thermal sensors.
They had 2 guards standing right next to him, remember?
2 guards standing right next to him. I'm pretty sure if you were to do something, they would descend down into a chamber, just like in the movie.
Yeah, they would.
Yeah, I'm not really sure if everything else in the movie was accurate, but there it is. So anyway.
Oh God, you're ridiculous. Why do you want movies to be real life? They're movies. They're not real life.
I want them to be close. I just,
Maybe we need to go watch it again and like see how off it is.
That's the best thing you've ever said.
Okay. We'll report back in the next episode.
There's another fan here of the movie in the house that we're in. I think we're going to watch those tonight.
Okay. Let's do it.
Yeah. We'll get some good bourbon. Oh, also, we went to the Archives gift shop, and in the movie, the declaration was $35, and he was like struggling to find the cash, and that's what gave him away was he had to use a credit card to buy it.
Yeah.
Because he had the other declaration. He was like, they're like, are you trying to steal that? And he's like, no. So I grabbed one of the fake ones from the thing and like pretended like I was stealing it, but they were what, $4.99?
They were pretty cheap. Yeah.
They weren't $35.
No, they were not.
But anyway.
Yeah.
All right. So let's wrap this up. And on the other side, we'll talk about one of the last things that we saw, which was the Natural History Museum, because I had never been there.
Yep.
We didn't see all the exhibits because it's a massive place, but we'll talk about one of the places that we went that was pretty cool. So talk about that on the other side. Back in a minute.
Decisions.
Wait a minute. Are you still looking for cars on Carvana?
Yeah. Decisions.
When I used Carvana, I found the exact car I was looking for in minutes. Bought it on the spot.
Electric or full diesel? Decisions.
Come on, you've been at it for weeks. Just buy it already.
You're right. Crossover it is. Decisions decided.
Whether you know exactly what you want or like to take your time, buy your car the convenient way with Carvana.
Welcome back to episode 284 of the Archaeology Show, or the History Show.
It's the American History Show.
The American History Show.
We've been doing that a lot this summer, but we were in the Northeast where there's like so much American history stuff.
I guarantee
we'll
the next...
leave this behind soon.
Yeah. The next episode will be articles about archaeology.
Yes, it will, because I actually have, I think,
There's so much.
There's at least 2 episodes, like, because where we keep our notes, that I've started with articles that I've been like, oh, we should talk about that.
Yeah.
And like, I think we need like 2 or 3 episodes of articles just to get caught up on like news and things that have come out. So, yeah. Right.
Well, we went to the Natural History Museum, and we went through a bunch of stuff, but to be honest, it was one of the last things we did, and we were just kind of over it at that point. But we saw some of the big things. We went through the kind of the marine mammals exhibit, which was kind of neat. But this museum was packed. I gotta say,
it was.
There were so many people, and it was
a Saturday, and we went in the afternoon.
Yeah, I was just kind of done with it.
Okay, like let me just be totally honest. We had some time to kill before we were going to the National Archives, and I wanted to see the Hope Diamond because it's really big and sparkly. So that's why we went.
Yeah.
That's why. We won't really talk about that here. It's not archaeology or history or anything really. It's just a really big sparkly diamond that's super pretty.
Pro tip on the Hope Diamond though, it spins and sits there for a few seconds.
Yeah.
It's good, like spins on an axis. So you don't have to like be in a certain spot.
Yeah, just wait and it'll come to you.
Yeah. But anyway, we saw a really kind of cool gem exhibit with a lot of cool stuff.
I like that.
The gems
love all
were
the
neat.
Sparkly stuff.
They have kind of a rotating exhibit on cell phones, which is kind of cool.
Oh yeah, that's the new exhibit.
Yeah.
So we did kind of cruise through there, and like this is not really related to archaeology, sorry, but I loved the exhibit with all the old phones, the old cell phones, because we were like walking around it being like, oh, I had that one in like 2005. And I think my parents had that one in, 1992. And that was really fun.
But the exhibit was talking about like where some of the components in your phone come from.
Yeah.
And how they source some of the materials and things like that. So that was kind of neat.
Yeah, that was cool.
One of the things that we did spend a little bit of time in was the Human Origins exhibit.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was oddly well attended. Like sometimes that history stuff people just don't like go to.
Well, yeah.
But it was pretty packed.
And it's like basically an evolution exhibit almost, because they're talking, it's human origin. It's called the Hall of Human Origins. And it very clearly, even in that little movie in the very beginning, when you walk in, is showing how humans evolved.
Yeah. So first off, let me talk about that.
Millions of years.
People were just like cruising through that. And that was probably the best part of the whole thing. It was
really cool.
I stopped. You have to stop like right in the middle of it. And people are like shoving past me and probably thinking I'm rude by standing in the middle of it. But I'll tell you what, you're literally in a tunnel with a super cool movie playing in a tunnel. And I'm like, okay, well, go around me then, jerk, because this is neat.
But like our level of nerd is like, I
don't care. If you're going to play a movie in a tunnel, I'm going to stop and watch it.
No, I mean, that's why other people weren't necessarily stopping.
But that's like the best part. And that kind of explains everything that you're about to see.
Yeah.
So just sit there and watch the 3-minute movie and be better for it.
A super good intro. For sure.
So I thought just highlighting what I thought was the best things in the entire thing. First off, I hate museums where you read everything.
Yeah.
I hate museums that show things in cases with no explanation. So I hate lots of words and I hate no words. I hate those two things.
Yeah.
I love museums that are interactive and I like museums that have like things you can see and touch and feel and just like really three-dimensional objects. And this exhibit had all of that.
It did have all of that.
Right. So for the kids, for the adults, it had interactive things for kids. It had interactive things for adults, like the bigs, like, I don't know if they were bronze or they were cast sculptures of different,
what the
different early humans in not early hominids, I should say.
Early hominids, yes.
In different positions, which was really like, you could really see it. You could see an Australopithecus bent down trying to, do something. And that was just visually appealing.
Yeah. And they are obviously following all the recent research that shows that women and men probably had somewhat the same roles in these early cultures. And so the hunter, they had a like bronzy looking sculpture of a hunter and it was a woman, not a man.
Yeah. Hauling like a whatever animal she had over her shoulder.
Yep.
Yeah. Or they, I don't want to put a gender on her. Yeah. I don't know what her pronouns were.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that was super cool too. And if you're like me and you really like a lot of words and you want to stop and read every sign and learn everything.
There's plenty of words in there.
There were words and that were explaining the different things. But one of my favorite parts was the exhibit of the early hominids that died by
violence.
Yeah, violence or like disease or whatever. Like one of them, the person died because they ate too much liver of a carnivore and a carnivore's liver has too much of some bad chemical in it or whatever. And it built up in her system. And then, it just eventually killed her. And they could tell that by looking at her bones, which was so cool.
That wasn't my favorite violent death. My favorite violent deaths were the ones where you could see like the alligator bites on the ankle bone or like the one where like a big eagle or something, just like
talon. Yeah.
You could see the talons in the eye socket.
The eye socket. That's right. So like that is such a visceral, like obvious description of how life was so hard, so hard and so dangerous for these people. And the fact that we are sitting here today to talk about this on a microphone and that we've developed that far, that we are now safe from eagles and crocodiles and carnivore livers, like it's crazy that we even evolved to this point. We are.
One simple fact of evolution, whether you believe in it or not, doesn't really matter, because one simple fact of just like human genetics and breeding, and if you have a parent and a grandparent, then this is a fact that you must agree to. Whether or not you think you go back 6,000 years or 6 billion years, is that you are the result of an unbroken chain of success.
Yeah. Unbroken chain of survivors. Yeah.
And you go back to single-celled organisms or however far back your philosophy thinks you go.
Your brain allows you to think. But like your parents, none of them died before they were old enough to have kids. Yep. Obviously, because you're here. The same for their parents and their parents and their parents.
I mean, they might have died right after.
They might have. But that doesn't matter. Evolutionarily speaking, it doesn't matter. They produced children. So they contributed to evolution overall.
So I just love thinking about that thought. Again, no matter how far back you think it goes back all the way.
Yeah.
So it's pretty neat. But the other one thing real quick that I really liked about this, and we've got a picture of you doing this, but they had a really cool rock art exhibit where they literally put up like a rock wall in a cave with some simulated like firelight.
The Lascaux cave, basically, right? With
Similar
like the
to that,
handprints on it.
It's a random cave that's like Lascaux, but they've got like some pictographs. So it's not like rock art, like petroglyphs,
right?
But pictographs, so painted rock art.
Yes.
And you put your hand up against one because you can touch it, and that's what I like about some museum exhibits that are done well. Is it's not like behind something that you can't get on it, and you don't want to touch real artifacts, but they've got replicas. Like for example, in the front of the exhibit where we started, there's actual skulls. Well, replica skulls where you can touch and feel and get on these these hominid skulls and really feel them and really put your hands on them. And it's kind of gross from a COVID standpoint, but
but that touch, that feel, like it really helps your brain understand what it is that you're seeing.
Yeah, it is.
And one of the other things that I thought was really, really cool to see is that they have an actual Neanderthal skeleton like laid out in anatomical position that you can see. And that's just always such a really amazing thing to see, because there's not that many of them, not really, and to have that on display. And I guess it's like the only one on display in the United States, which makes it special. And it's one of the earliest ones found. So it's like almost like the Neanderthal type specimen. So really, really cool that they have that there and you can see it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So very well done. Worth seeing if you go there. So, all right. Well, about time to wrap this one up. Like I said, we'll be back next time with some news articles.
Yes.
And I guess with that, we will see you guys next week.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to The Archaeology Show. Feel free to comment and view the show notes on the website at www.archpodnet.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at ArchPodNet. Music for this show is called I Wish You Would Look from the band Sea Hero. Again, thanks for listening and have an awesome day. This episode was produced by Chris Webster from his RV traveling the United States, Tristan Boyle in Scotland, DigTech LLC, Culturo Media, and the Archaeology Podcast Network, and was edited by Rachel Roden.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.